caution. Your paradigm is about to shift at the intersection of fact and reason. You're entering Kingston Country.
I'm Dan Kingston, and you're listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast. We signed a deal with the Taliban today to end the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. October 7th, 2001 is when the first attack on Afghanistan was launched, of course in retaliation for the harboring of Osama bin Laden, who is the mastermind of 9/11. And since then, the war in Afghanistan really has morphed well beyond its original mission. The Taliban has agreed to end their ties with Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups, and we've agreed to pull out all American forces over a 14-month time span, 5,000 within the next 135 days. And this is all, of course, assuming the Taliban upholds their end of the bargain. Joining today to discuss is Marine combat veteran Sergeant Barklaw, who served in Afghanistan. Thank you for coming back on the podcast, Sergeant.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it because, I mean, you were there. You have firsthand experience. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Your unit was among the first in Afghanistan at the beginning of the war. Is that right?
That's correct. We actually deployed to Afghanistan 9 days after 9/11. So I was with 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines Kilo Company on the 26th MEU. Us, along with the 15th MEU out of Camp Pendleton, were actually the first ground force that was not Special Forces or Navy SEALs to go into Afghanistan after 9/11.
And what was your experience like there in the beginning of the war? I mean, it's such a long war, 18 years, and there's so many different phases of the war. You were there in the beginning of it. What was that like? Much different than it is now, I'm sure. I was much younger, 18 years younger. I had just turned 22 less than a month previous. So, we're all young, inexperienced. No one other than maybe 2 or 3 senior enlisted people in my unit had combat experience. Other than training, obviously you don't know what to expect. When you go in, the rules of engagement were different. There were really no rules of engagement to start with. We didn't have any real forward operating bases, or what we call FOBs, set up, other than just a hand, like 2 or 3 FOBs, with not a lot of stuff on them. We actually took Kandahar International Airport. It was a Al-Qaeda stronghold just prior to us landing in the airstrip in the C-130 and taking the airport. Bomb craters were still smoldering when we got out of the back of the C-130. Oh my God!
And we had combat engagement right from the start.
Ugh.
So then we obviously pushed through. That was Kandahar International Airport. We did missions in some of the small villages and stuff around Kandahar. Missions up into the mountains of Kandahar. We assisted and ended up having to go back up the Army. It was Operation Anaconda, which was the big Army Ranger mission that happened while we were in country. So there was a lot of things that were different then than they are now. Obviously, rules of engagement changed. Politics has changed. Administrations have changed. I think America's appetite to stay in country has changed compared to what it was. Even though out of all the engagements that we had going on over the last 18 years, Afghanistan was the one legitimate one that we were involved in.
I mean, your first experience in Afghanistan was literally coming out of the plane and being shot at and taken to the airport. Do I understand that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Kandahar International Airport.
It sounds like something that I can only imagine in a movie scene. I mean, how long are you flying in the airplane, and then do they say, okay, the doors are going to open and people are going to be shooting at you? I mean, is that what it's like?
No, well, we knew we had intel and briefings previous to leaving Pakistan. So what initially happened was we left our ships because we were an amphibious assault unit. So we actually went on to the big deck, which was the USS Bataan, and we were heloed in CH-46s into Pafpasni, Pakistan, at a little airstrip right on the coastline. And from there, the units went to FOB Rhino. What happened with us is the attachment that I was a part of, because I was in a weapons platoon as a machine gunner, we got sidetracked because of weather. So we were the last one to leave Pafpasni. We never actually made it to FOB Rhino because of the weather. We ended up having to go back in a little bit further north into Pakistan from where we had initially left to an airstrip where they were actually running drone missions out of. And drones were not very well known at the time. Matter of fact, we had people who were taking pictures who got their cameras confiscated because taking pictures of the drones and stuff. So we ended up leaving that our Air Force airstrip and going straight into Kandahar, and the rest of our unit caught up with us, hours to half a day later. But we went in at night. We were shot at by surface-to-air or anti-aircraft rounds. We were led in by like gunships and stuff, helos that actually were taking out surface-to-air or like surface-to-air missile and anti-aircraft spots up in the mountains. So we were actually shot at while we were in the C-130 coming over Kandahar International Airport, or coming over the mountain, the Kandahar mountain range, headed into the airport. And then when we landed, we came out because we knew that Al-Qaeda was already there. It was a stronghold for them. During regular business before the war even started, with only less than a football field away was a training ground for Al-Qaeda. So they were right there at the airport, daily, even before the war even started. And then
Al-Qaeda? It was Al-Qaeda. It wasn't Taliban. You knew the difference at that time?
Well, I don't know. We had a bunch of intel previously going in. Taliban. We didn't differentiate at the time between Taliban and Al-Qaeda.
Got it.
So one ran the other.
Yeah, of basically. Course. Sergeant, you have such personal experience, obviously, and so many people do. So many people fought in that war. At the height of it, we had like 100,000 Americans over there in Afghanistan. So this is really personal for a lot of people, right? And how do you feel about the news today with the agreement that's been signed?
Right. So the two things I'll say, one, I think for our country, it's a double-edged sword. And then, it's bittersweet for me personally. And, as far as for our country goes, I think, the appetite for war in our country, and especially from the war fighters, our job to go over there and protect our country. But after a certain period of time, I think, war fatigue sets in and people are just ready to come home. And I think that's what's happened. So I think, on one hand, it's great because, we don't want to fight an endless war, and that's really what it would have turned into had we decided to stay over and fight. And then, it's a double-edged sword because now we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The possibilities of, I guess there's always a possibility that things could work out for the best, and that peace remains and Afghanistan moves forward as a normal semi-democratic country, and so it's good for us in that aspect if it happens. It's bad for us because it could be bad for us if it doesn't work out the way it's supposed to. And then you end up with, another extremist training ground.
Are you then kind of... it doesn't sound like you're so hopeful that the Taliban's going to uphold their end of the agreement to sever ties with Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. Are you pessimistic about that?
Well, if you go back and look at the history of Afghanistan, this is stuff that's been going on for decades and decades. They've been fighting wars, sometimes against other countries and foreign invaders, sometimes against, factions within the country. So, yeah, I am kind of pessimistic, I guess you could say, because it's just what they know. And truthfully, I think they'll say and do whatever they can say and do to get us out of the country.
I want to ask you,
that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I guess they're terrorists, so how much trust can you put in terrorists? I predict, maybe this is already happening, I haven't been watching so much on the CNN or mainstream media, that they'll start criticizing this deal because it doesn't protect democracy or women or minority rights. I guess I don't think there's any commitment that the Taliban's made to those things. Okay, but they have made a commitment to stopping ties with other terrorists. So, I mean, if let's assume that they do that and they sever ties with Al-Qaeda and other terrorists, and they're not a launching pad now for attacks on this country, then do we kind of have to just, suck it up a little bit and say it sucks? They have different rights over there and they treat their people horribly. But at what point do we have to say, okay, we can't get everything we want? At a certain point, don't we just have to let it go? Or what's your concern about that? Do you feel like the mainstream media is going to use that to criticize this deal?
I think the mainstream media will use anything that they can to criticize, especially anything that this administration does. I don't always agree with everything that the administration does. My politics really are more down the middle. And it's been that way through every administration. When I first went into the military, Bill Clinton was my commander-in-chief. All the way through, my career, Barack Obama was my commander-in-chief. So I didn't always agree with what the administration was going to do. But I think no matter what, the mainstream media will use it, as a way to throw shade on Trump and his administration any chance they get. Having said that, I will say, though, that you can't stay in countries based on what rights they may or may not eventually end up having or get taken away. There are, a lot of countries around the world that don't view things and see things the way we do. And if they are going to be a sovereign nation, they have a right to live and have the rights and laws and stuff that they want for their country. And it's up to the people of that country to stand up for themselves and to, just like we did for this country and others have done for their country throughout world history. So, obviously we don't want human rights violations, but even still, we still work and deal with countries that are some of the biggest violators of human rights in around the world, and we still do business with them. So it doesn't stop us from trying to deal with North Korea. It doesn't stop us, with Saudi Arabia and those types of countries. So it's one of those things. Either we're going to stay forever, or we need to get out and just see what happens.
This is Kingston Country.
The Dan Kingston podcast is brought to you by Traveling with Janice and Cruise Brothers. You can count on Traveling with Janice and Cruise Brothers to be your trusted resource to help with travel-related questions and recommendations, especially given what's going on in the news right now. You don't want to book anything without first consulting Janice to ensure you stay safe and protected Call Janice at 480-648-3324 or email travelingwithjanice@gmail.com. Okay, and we're back with the sergeant now, Trey Barklaw, who served in Afghanistan, Marine combat veteran. Sergeant, over 50,000 Afghan security forces have been killed over just the last 5 years, and comparable number of losses on the Taliban side. There's over 2,400 Americans that have been killed, but looks like it was spiraling out of control just for everybody lately over there. Is that your read of it, or were things kind of getting better? I mean, is this kind of out of necessity, this deal?
Yeah, so I said earlier that it was a double-edged sword for our country, but it was bittersweet for me. And one of the reasons why I say it's bittersweet for me is because of the fact that I was in the unit that first deployed to Afghanistan. There are friends of mine who we were close and we all considered each other family who lost their lives in Afghanistan. We've paid with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for our service members and our allies. So, over the decade or more than a decade and a half, nearly 2 decades of fighting in Afghanistan, politics has taken over. Rules of engagement changed to restrict our war fighters. They turned into more of a pseudo law enforcement agency instead of combat war fighters, and it caused problems. That actually makes us less safe over there. And then once you start to try to withdraw and pull down, but keep smaller forces to try to do the same job as the bigger force, it becomes more dangerous. And it leaves openings and holes for extremists and terrorists to come in and commit these acts. We have a lot of people that we're training that will be on your side and in the uniform of the Afghan military, but then turn and kill the people that are there training them.
Lots of that. Lots of
that
those.
Happens.
Yeah, recently, just recently.
So I think it's become more of a necessity to get out now. Why we can still show that we did some good, we did our job, we had a mission accomplished, and now it's time to come home.
God, I hate to ask this question, Sergeant.
Are time to do it.
People going to criticize and say that we lost this war? Are we going to have to listen to that?
I'm sure that will be the opinion of some. I think time will tell. History will tell. What I think happened is, my personal opinion is, we won the war. What we failed at is the rebuilding and propping up of the Afghan government.
Which is impossible, is it not? Is that the main lesson to learn from this? So kind of we already knew going in that you can't do that, right? That's impossible. I mean, that you did the objective. You got Osama bin Laden. We secured Afghanistan from being a launching pad to this country. And wasn't that the objective all along? So in that sense, we won the war, and we just stayed there because we were trying to achieve other objectives that maybe the politicians wanted to do that were impossible, or maybe I can't blame it on the politicians, because I think a lot of high up military people wanted us to stay there and thought we could they kept thinking we could get the edge. We can, and so I think what are the lessons to be learned from your opinion?
Right. So I think some of the lessons to be learned, I think the reason why some of the military higher-ups, the generals, and some of those probably in the CIA and alike wanted to stay because of, its strategic placement for us over there,
Iran,
right in the hotbed,
Pakistan.
Iran, right, exactly. So they're looking at it from more of a military and secret ops type of strategy. I think politicians kind of get caught up and lost, sometimes because, they know how we do things here and they want to try to change things and make things maybe better for other people. I think it starts out with good intention. But lessons that we need to learn. You can't continue long drawn out, never-ending wars, regime change wars. Truthfully, the one Democrat that was running for president and still actually is Tulsi Gabbard. I really like listening to her because she's been there several times. She's a military officer. She's a sitting congresswoman. So, she's in the know, and so I like listening to her. Everything that Tulsi Gabbard has said during her campaign has been spot on. I think one of the things that we really need to learn from this is you can't have regime change wars because the culture for decades in these countries doesn't really lend itself to that. I think what we need to focus on more is making sure that if we do have to go in, or when we do go in, that we have a bottom line objective, and once we achieve that objective, we have a clear exit strategy.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with us over the last several wars, whether it was the first Iraq war was fought correctly. We went in, took 100 hours, and we got out.
The Gulf War.
There was a clear
Kuwait.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. So there was a clear objective, and then there was an exit strategy, and they executed the exit strategy as quick as they executed the strategy to go in. So that turned out okay. What you have here in these different places that we go into, specifically Iraq and Afghanistan, I think we go in kind of open-ended. There is no real, okay, this is the objective, and once we get to this certain point, that's it. It's over with, and then we have a clear strategy that's going to be safe to bring our men and women home. I don't think we do that. And once you don't have a clear exit strategy and a clear end, it becomes fogged, right? The lines become blurred, and you end up staying a lot longer than you probably should. Like I said, Afghanistan conflict was legitimate. We needed to go there. We were attacked on our own soil. We had to retaliate. We had to make sure that not just us, but others around the world were safe and free from the terrorists that were coming out of Afghanistan. But once we did that, we should have had a better exit strategy. We should have been gone probably at least 10 to 12 years ago.
Well, I remember after 9/11, and it was a comforting feeling knowing that we could defend ourselves and respond in Afghanistan in such a way that was a dominant way. So I look at it as a great success, and I'm hopeful about this deal. You brought up Gabbard, who I like what she says. I also like the Congressman Matt Gaetz, who has a similar view about these things, the need to learn these lessons that you eloquently spoke about. Now, some good news is that in the last 7 days, I guess there's been a reduction of 80% of violence. And this was one of the contingencies, I guess, to lead up to the agreement. And so there was a reduction in violence over the last seven days of 80%. So does that make you a little bit more optimistic, maybe? Or do you think that might just fall apart?
Well, I guess, I'm on the fence about it. I say that I'm, pessimistic. I think it's 50-50. There's a 50-50 chance, I believe, which is probably better now than if we wait. Like I said, it's just one of those things. It's just will they follow the agreement that's made? Once we withdraw, then there's really nothing that we can do about it.
Can with the advanced drone technology, I mean, it's amazing, by the way, that you brought up it was so new in 2001 that they took away cameras for taking pictures of it. it would have been like UFOs. I mean, yeah, that was top secret back then. I didn't know that it existed in 2001. But now the technology come so far. Do you think maybe they have super secret drone technology that can kind of facilitate withdrawal of troops and allow us still to maintain some kind of presence there?
Oh yeah. Now, I think our capabilities with drones are even greater now than they were back in 2001.
Well, of course. I mean, it's got to be crazy technology now, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best advantage that we have over terrorist groups, because between Soleimani and a lot of the other terrorists here recently that have been taken out with drone strikes, they don't know when it's coming, and our intel that we get is second to none. Of course, everybody likes to point to the weapons of mass destruction or the current thing with, the Trump administration and the dirty dossier and all that stuff. But our intelligence groups and the assets that they have on the ground to give them to the minute actionable intelligence is second to none, and greater now than it's ever been. The way that our our intel agencies are able to work around the world, and then having that good of intel with the ability to reach out and affect terrorists, either individual or in groups, with the drones, gives us a great advantage. It's a great capability. So I think we will still be able to, and I'm sure we will, still utilize drones to our advantage. And it will be probably our single biggest asset in keeping the terrorist organizations at bay for a while.
I agree 100%, and I pray for that, and I pray for the success in Afghanistan. Thank you, Marine Combat Veteran Sergeant Barclaw. Thank you for your service in Afghanistan, your service to this country. We all owe you a debt of gratitude, and really appreciate you sharing your experiences today on the podcast and your views about the historic news today. Thank you.
Kingston Country. You've been listening to the Dan Kingston Podcast.
Dan Kingston here, asking you to do me a huge favor. Will you possibly rate the Dan Kingston Podcast on Apple Podcasts? Each new rating, believe it or not, really does have a major impact on the way Apple's algorithm recommends content. With just one quick click, you can help promote citizen journalism and end the stranglehold of the mainstream media. Together, we're going to do this. Thank you. I really appreciate your support.